Nostalgia. Dave here with another podcast, action-packed one this week. And do my BLACKPINK reaction to their Coachella set. A lot to get into there. Talking about how HBO Max is now being rebranded as Max and why that doesn't make any sense to me. And talk about the Harry Potter remake series for Max and why remaking the books is really dumb. Also going to talk about the anime sensation film Suzume, Barry season 4, Marvel's Miss Maisel season 5, both back for their final seasons, very exciting. And also Kelly Reichardt's new film Showing Up, starring Michelle Williams. So make sure you subscribe, youtube.com/nostalgiapod, linktree.com/nostalgiapod. Hit that best of 2023 Spotify playlist, check the link below, and let me know what's good. Let's get into it. All right, let's start off with my reaction to BLACKPINK's Coachella headlining set. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with my reaction to BLACKPINK's Coachella headlining set. Yes, of course, BLACKPINK, one of the headliners at 2023 Coachella, Pinkchella, if you will. BLACKPINK in 2019, of course, went to Coachella, were the first K-pop girl group to perform there. Now they're back, the first Korean act to headline at the festival. I wanted to talk about this specifically because, of course, Coachella is relevant and important every year in terms of the music industry, but also this is, I think, a seminal moment in K-pop history and a really big moment, obviously, in Blackpink's career, and I think it's very interesting. So I'm going to get into really, I think, all the angles to this and what's next for Blackpink, which I also think is quite interesting to ponder. Overall, it was awesome that Coachella live streamed every single stage throughout the day for this festival for the first time. Of course, making it very easy to watch the show rather than watching it pieced out on Instagram and YouTube for the next month. I just watched the set in full on YouTube. How nice. And I thought it was a really awesome set for a lot of reasons. I think most Blackpink fans have watched clips of the Born Pink World Tour that's still ongoing since last fall. And if they haven't attended it, of course. So I have a good kind of feel of how the Born Pink set list has gone and how those songs have been performed. And I was curious to see what would be different about, the Coachella 2023 set list. Obviously, we know most of the songs will be the same, but how would it be different? And, off the bat, I think the order of the songs makes sense that would change. But I was really happy to see new choreography, just changes to how songs were done. Whether it's like little flares and like accents to certain songs, whether it's like extended intros or outros to songs, extended dance breaks, background dancer breaks. It was, I think, livened up in a really cool way. I think right off the bat, like Type of Girl, for example, which we knew they would perform, one of the bangers off the last album, but the way they had the dancers use these almost like feathery walls to like hide the singers of Blackpink, and it was, I think, a really cool presentation of that. There were some really cool moments where the group would have the background dancers around them, as in this like big mob and stuff. Uh, just those changes I thought were really cool to see. Pink Venom was the opener this time around, which I think made a lot of sense. That was a nice change. And in general, I mean, this set list is just kind of insane. Pink Venom, Kill This Love, How You Like That, Pretty Savage as the first 4 songs, just 4 of their biggest bangers. Love it. After that was, I think, the one surprise in the set list to me, which would be Kick It, from the Kill This Love EP. That was like, the deep cut pick. That is far from a popular Blackpink song. I wouldn't have guessed that as the selection. Nonetheless, kind of cool, and then did Whistle, of course, another banger. Then they went to the solos, which is another more room for, doing something different. Jenny does You and Me, which of course is still unreleased, but she's been performing this all Born Pink tour, but debuting a remix, extended verse, a rap verse version of the second half of the song, which had not been heard before. Sounded great. I really need to hear this version of the song on digital streaming platforms. Put the song out. The Jisoo solo project is out. Now you can officially release Jenny's second solo. Just do it. We need it. I thought that was good. That was really good. Jisoo did Flower. Rose did Both Gone and On the Ground as a medley. Lisa did Money. What you expect. And then they just kind of ran through more bangers. Boombaya, Lovesick Girls, Playing with Fire, Type of Girl, Shut Down, Tally, Do 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 Do, and Forever Young. I thought Shut Down was absolutely
Fire. That was my favorite song off Born Pink, one of my top 10 songs of 2022. Love the track. And just the energy that I think the members brought to that song specifically really stood out to me. I love that one. Awesome. Also, I have to say, like, Playing with Fire, like, it's a song with 800 million views on YouTube. I can't really call it an underrated song, but I feel like in terms of like the big Blackpink hits, it's almost underrated at this point. Really goes hard. Um, Notably, though, I guess the other surprise with the set list ending with Forever Young and ending. There was no encore. There was no As If It's Your Last, which was what I think a lot of Blinks were expecting to be the ender. A very popular song of theirs, of course. Um, they didn't come out right on time. I wonder if that was due to set change or timing. Hard to say. But they didn't like premiere right at 12 Eastern, 9 Pacific. They didn't come out till like I don't know, like 20 minutes in. Maybe they just ran out of time and they had a hard cutoff. And maybe if they had started on time, they could have fit in another song. Maybe this was the plan all along. Who can say? Doesn't detract from it at all. It just I think just a bit of a surprise. Um, yeah, I thought they really crushed it. Vocally, I thought the audio mix was a bit sketchy in the beginning. In terms of you having like your background and then hearing the live vocals. It was hard to hear the live vocals in the beginning. They ironed that out as the set progressed, and they all sounded really good. There's been a lot of talk about the energy level of the Blackpink members throughout the tour, at least the consistency of that. But I really had no doubt, and of course, we had nothing to fear. They all brought it with this set, just like they brought it back in 2019. I think it's really going to be one of those memorable moments in like Coachella recent history. Really exciting. Rose in particular really stood out to me. I thought she just really popped. Obviously, the hair was like really noticeable. She looked great, but her live vocal sounds incredible. Awesome. I think on her solo, she really shines specifically. Um, yeah, I think, moving forward, my big question would be like, what's next for this group? We know the Born Pink World Tour still has some Asia dates to go out through into the early summer, and they just announced Born Pink World Tour Encore in North America, doing a few stadium shows in the United States, their first stadium shows. Twice recently announced stadium shows. Blackpink surely realized that they too could perform at stadiums, and here we are. Now, the elephant in the room, of course, is that Blackpink's 7-year deal with YG is coming to an end in August. All K-pop contracts have a max of 7 years per South Korean law. Now, some of these stadium tours with this encore addition to the Born Pink World Tour are taking place in like August or like September, whenever it is. Probably suggesting that Blackpink is going to re-up with YG. I'm curious to see like what the terms of that are because despite the fact that YG owns like the name Blackpink, like it's clear that Rose, Jisoo, Jennie, and Lisa, they're just such like global superstars at this point. They have I mean, apart from music, their fashion presence in that industry is really well established too. They don't really need YG unless YG is really supporting them on super favorable terms, the way like Hybe is all in on the BTS business, for example. So I'd expect them to get like really big deal, and perhaps maybe they go to the offshoot of YG, the Black Label that their longtime producer Teddy Park is heading. I would not be shocked if that was the angle they go to, and how that really manifests to like you and me, the average person, and being any different. I'm not really sure. I would love to hear more Blackpink music. I would love to hear more collaborations outside of the YG family. Who knows if we'll ever get that? We can hope. But yeah, I'm really curious to see like what's next because this kind of feels like a huge flashpoint, and this Coachella set really feels like a kind of the culmination, the explanation point of this world conquering 7-year run that has been, Act One, Era One of Blackpink. So thankfully, it was a huge success, and they still have a lot of tour dates coming up. But really curious for what's up next with Act Two. But make sure you subscribe to the channel. Review K-pop all the time. So for more music reviews, reactions, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. All right, now let's talk about the HBO Max rebrand as Max. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a reaction to HBO Max going away, now known as Max. Yeah, Warner Bros. Discovery changed the name of HBO Max. New service called Max. It still has everything that HBO Max had, but also some of the Discovery Plus stuff is in there. I'm going to get into all this, why this was done, what this means, and yeah, So, obviously, Warner Brothers Discovery has been going through a large restructuring ever since, the merger, and a lot of big headlines as a result of that. Of course, that girl canceled for a tax credit. Shows like Westworld off the HBO Max platform, licensed out to these other fast services not owned by Warner Bros. Discovery to give new revenue streams to the business, really changing the streaming ecosystem we thought we were in, where things get made, things get put in a service, you get them on that service. Not how WBD is moving these days. They're going to license stuff out. They're going to take stuff off it now Max before this HBO Max, and they are really trying to cut down on that debt. That much is clear. And in the process, they are rebranding HBO Max. And what I find really confounding about this is two things. One, Max is a really dumb name for a streaming service. Max is just a generic noun. The appeal of HBO Max was the HBO in it. A brand people have known about since the 70s, a brand associated with tremendous quality and consistency. Max, implying that it's not just HBO content. You're paying the same price you always paid for HBO for years and years, but you're getting all this other stuff, such as the Discovery Plus content. Now the Discovery Plus content is coming to Max, but Discovery Plus, the small niche streaming service, cheap, that service is still going to exist. It's not going away. It's both been folded into Max, but still existing on its own, which I thought was not going to be the plan. They say that there are tons of people that are very happy about Discovery Plus. Why mess it up for them? But also, by folding it into Max, you might kind of upgrade those kind of consumers and thus get them to pay more for their subscription to the company. I guess I see that angle. I just really hate this name change because I don't see what the hell this accomplishes. Like, the spin is that it's a more engaging to more people type brand, as if the HBO name was somehow dissuading people. I find that like really hard to believe. Look at the data. HBO Max, plus Discovery Plus had what, like 90 something subscribers last they told us last month. They told us about all these subscribers, over 90 for the two services, HBO Max and Discovery Plus. Despite what David Zaslav might want to believe, people are subscribing to HBO, not to Discovery Plus. Discovery Plus is a niche service, profitable service, a cheap service, but it's small. HBO is the selling point. And I just don't understand how you think, oh, well, we'll change the name and somehow make it easier to sell when it's called Max. Disney, Paramount, Apple, HBO. These are decades long brands. Some of those are 100 years old. At least Peacock is a unique name that describes a company logo that's been around for decades. Hulu is a very unique name that's been around a while now. Netflix been around a while now. Max, that's just the name. That's just a word. It's very stupid to me. So, in the grand scheme, not much is going to change to the average person besides getting Discovery Plus stuff there. If you want to watch like 90 Day Fiance or, all those other various shows, like if you want those are good. And those have value to streaming services, not to be clear. If you look at the streaming data, there's the really popular stuff that we get on HBO Sunday night, but to get like innings pitched, hours logged, you need kind of that fluff that keeps people turning on your service when they're doing laundry, and that's the Discovery Plus type content. So it's not that that stuff doesn't have value to the service. I just don't really understand the need to rebrand, and I don't know how this rebrand communicates what you expect it to people that don't yet already subscribe. I find it pretty stupid. Price is basically staying the same. So yeah, I don't think this affects the average person, but we'll really need to see how they're able to sell this because I have my doubts. But Casey Bloys is still running the show. I trust him. HBO still has an amazing batting average. For what I care about, nothing's going to change. They just announced that another Game of Thrones spinoff is officially going straight to series, which would be the Dunk and Egg prequel, adaptation of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Very exciting, awesome thing to adapt. Can't wait for that. Obviously, that'll be years away. But yeah, how do you feel about the HBO Max rebrand to Max? Does it make any sense to you? Because it doesn't to me. And for more reactions to the streaming wars, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. And now let's discuss the Warner Brothers Discovery announcement that they are making a Harry Potter TV series for Max. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a reaction to the news that Max, formerly HBO Max, will be making a Harry Potter TV series for the service, notably adapting each book in the landmark, fantasy series into a season of TV. So that would be 7 books, 7 seasons. This is a reboot, a remake of Harry Potter that we've previously seen on the big screen. I think it's a very interesting decision that I'm not a huge fan of, but it is tantalizing. So let's get into all that. So obviously, you can't really talk about the Harry Potter franchise without talking about the continuing controversy regarding J.K. Rowling, the creator of the series, and her public persona, largely regarding her views on the trans community. And despite all that, Harry Potter has really sustained itself. Look no further than Hogwarts Legacy, the long-awaited, open world Potter video game, the first of its kind. That game came out in mid-February, and that sold 12 million copies in its first 2 weeks. That's on pace to be, at worst, probably the third best-selling video game of the year, and absolutely rousing success. Harry Potter still sustains itself with its theme park business, and despite the fact that the Fantastic Beasts movies fizzled out, you know, it's a strong brand. I do find it kind of creatively bankrupt to want to remake the series for TV. We had previously heard of series developments because it's so tantalizing to us, right? There's so many things you could do with Harry Potter. You have the movies that adapted the books. They're flawed for sure. I'm not a fan of a lot of them as far as being effective adaptations, but they're very successful, very popular. There's a lot of nostalgia for those. There was room to perhaps make a Founding of Hogwarts series or movies regarding, the head of the houses, right? Godric Gryffindor, Salazar Slytherin, and all those cats. That was an option. Do a Marauder series with James Potter and those guys. The famous joke, right? Make Law and Order. Just make a Harry Potter series set in the world, just regarding, people doing stuff, people working. The appeal of the Fantastic Beasts movies was that they were going to leave England, leave Hogwarts, spend time in magical America, something we hadn't experienced before. There's a lot to explore. Harry Potter, the books take place in the 90s. You can keep going back. You can go in the future. You can do whatever you want. But what we don't want you to do is just do what you've already done. That's basically what they're doing. Now, spending a whole season with a book plot sounds fun. Sounds like it'll be a really good time if done well. And it's being made by, under Casey Boys' purview. Not going to be on HBO per se, but it'll be on Max. So quality is assumed to be good. Spending a lot of time with those books, especially the later books that require a lot of time to really get into how dense they get, sounds awesome. In the early books, is spending more time with Hogwarts, going to class. Sounds like a great time. It's what people love. But creatively, it's just not satisfying, you know? Um, the Cursed Child is still printing money on stage. Another thing that creatively was not super well liked. You didn't have to necessarily follow that up. You could have done a different type of sequel. But I think the missed opportunity here, if you really wanted to cash in, would have been to follow on that nostalgia, right? Think about how popular those films are, despite their flaws. If you had made a sequel, whether it was Cursed Child or JK came up with something else, and despite our feelings on JK, she, runs the IP, she has to be involved to make it. So it's kind of a necessary evil type thing. If you made a new version of the follow up to Deathly Hallows, right? Adult original cast, but you got that original cast back, Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, Emma Watson, you got the trio back. That is a movie that has the potential to rise up those box office charts and challenge something like an Avengers Endgame or an Avatar in terms of the highest grossing movies of all time. Sans inflation, obviously. Because that's a nostalgia play. What do we see time and time again? Spider-Man No Way Home, Star Wars The Force Awakens. The nostalgia plays are the things that have the last vestiges of really breaking that money. Jurassic World. We've seen this. There's not a lot of those left. But the Harry Potter sequel, the original cast, is one of those opportunities. And it seems like they're passing this up because I don't see how you could reboot and remake the series on HBO Max or on Max and then ever bring back the original movie cast later. Like, how would that? I mean, that would be some crazy planning shit to me that you also couldn't explain away with the multiverse the way you could with those superhero movies, right? That wouldn't make sense. And I think, part of it might be that Radcliffe and crew don't want to return. They've notably spoken out against Rowling's remarks. That could have forced their hand in a certain sense. But I don't know. Like, it's an incredibly safe, but also kind of lame decision to just remake the books. Despite, I think they'll be good. I think they'll be fun. There's a lot of stuff in the books that are great that people connect with, that people have loved for, a generation at this point that we didn't really see on the big screen, or as we didn't see done well on the big screen. There's an opportunity here for sure to bring a whole new generation of people, connect them to this story. You know, so that's a positive. But it's just not kind of what we wanted. And I don't know, maybe they saw the Fantastic Beasts film's performance and got cold feet, but I would lay that on the fact that those movies were at best only so. You know, we'll see. It's gonna be a while before we get this, but let me know, how are you feeling about the remake of Harry Potter? Is this what you wanted? It's not what I wanted, but how are you feeling about it? And for more movie reviews, TV reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. All right, now let's move on to the new Kelly Reichardt film, Showing Up. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Showing Up, the new film from Kelly Reichardt starring Michelle Williams. This is a movie I was looking forward to because Kelly Reichardt's last film, First Cow, came out in 2020, was in my top 5 that year. The last movie I saw before COVID happened, actually. And Kelly Reichardt in general, for people who know, one of the most accomplished and celebrated independent filmmakers of the last, few decades. And this is her follow-up to First Cow, movie I loved. This movie actually played back at Cannes last year, so it took a while to come out to us, starring Michelle Williams, also featuring Hong Chow and John Magaro from First Cow, Andre 3000, Judd Hirsch, pretty good cast. And this is a film that I'll say I didn't like it as much as First Cow, but I think there's a lot of merit to it. It makes sense. Kelly Reichardt made it, of course. Michelle Williams is the lead. She's always good. Here we are. So I think it's an interesting film because this is a movie about Lizzie, played by Michelle Williams, who's a artist in Portland, specifically a sculptor, like a ceramist specifically, and it's kind of about the process of being an artist. Doing the work, showing up, if you will, grinding it out, and I think it's kind of about process and creation, but also having the motivation to pull off something like that. And then when you get your results, how you feel about them and how people treat you. And, it's definitely a kind of an understated film. Most of the performances are pretty understated in that regard. And I think it's just something you have to kind of like sit with those themes and kind of absorb all of this atmosphere, I think, to really connect with the movie. It stands in stark contrast to me to First Cow because First Cow, of course, was like a frontier type film, which I think just had a lot of like easier ways to engage you. Whereas I think Showing Up requires a bit more like reflection on the audience member to connect with it. But I think for what it is, it's done quite well. Michelle Williams, who, to be honest, I didn't quite recognize her, whether it was the hair or her makeup or whatever it was, but like she doesn't quite look as recognizable as she normally does as Lizzie. Her landlord is played by Hong Chow, who's on a huge run right now, and Hong Chow's character Joe is also a fellow artist who's finding a bit more like local success than Lizzie is at the moment. And on the way, we meet this artist community where Andre 3000 is a fellow artist, and we find that Michelle Williams works for her mother, who's also an artist, played by Marianne Plunkett, and her she's estranged from Lizzie's father, played by Judd Hirsch, and they also have a son, played by John Magaro, who's also an artist in this whole artist community. Now, John Magaro's character, Sean, uh, suffers from mental illness, but he also is like a brilliant artist. So that's kind of something weighing on Lizzie. And Lizzie's kind of going through more or less this week of time where she has to like get her shit together for her show and get her art done. And she has all these other things encountering her, whether it's her hot water being out at her place and Joe not really doing much to get that resolved, whether it's a pigeon getting its wing broken by her cat, and then Lizzie kind of being forced to take care of this pigeon and what that represents. Um, it's a lot of little stuff, right? It's not like a showy film, and the where it goes, like it has a happy ending, but where it ends up, Lizzie showing off her work at this gallery showing, everyone kind of like telling her good job, she did well, and like it's not like this like rousing end or anything like that. So, like I said, overall, I think you kind of have to really sit there and connect with the themes, connect with like the process of the film. I didn't quite love it as much as I liked First Cow, but I do kind of admire like this style of filmmaking. Like it's pretty intentional, and like I think the themes are really well delivered on for sure. So interesting film. I would say people definitely check it out. It's from A24, so that should always get people's attention. Shocker. Yeah, but let me know, how'd you feel about Showing Up? It's in limited release. It's gonna expand a little bit probably and then be on VOD. Let me know, how'd you feel about it? Did you like it more or less than First Cow, for example? And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. And now let's move on to the anime sensation, Suzume. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of the anime film sensation Suzume from Makoto Shinkai, also known as Suzume no Tojimari, which translates to Suzume's Locking Up. This, of course, is the latest anime film from Makoto Shinkai, the modern anime maestro, the modern master of anime filmmaking, honestly. Produced by Comics Wave Films, which has produced many of his films, and has released just recently, this past weekend, in wide release in the United States after coming out in Japan and elsewhere in the world. And it's notable for a few reasons. One, the latest Shinkai film. Shinkai, of course, has made several movies, but really exploded with the masterpiece Your Name, which came out in 2016, which he followed up with Weathering with You 2019, and now Suzume. And Suzume, had a big performance in Japan, but notably actually outgrossed its Japan box office in China. The first time that a Japanese film has outgrossed the local market in China, the first anime film to gross $100 million in a territory outside of Japan. And as a result of this, it's the fourth highest grossing anime film of all time, over $260 million worldwide. Really impressive. It's not going to be as big as Your Name, but still a very big success for sure. If anything, the pretty paltry performance of this film in the United States is my biggest disappointment about it. But clearly, the Makoto Shinkai brand is strong in Asia and elsewhere in the world, and hopefully, the United States can eventually catch up. Because what I think is so appealing about him as a filmmaker is that he has, I think, a really cool lens in terms of how he approaches his storytelling and really gets the most out of the anime form. And I think that's just really appealing. And we know how big and global anime is. Of course, Demon Slayer 2 years ago becoming the highest grossing anime film of all time. Demon Slayer, a massive new franchise from its very inception to get as big as it is. Anime is gigantic. And I think there's room for the more like artsier or just straight up not made for teen boys anime the way something like Suzume is. So hopefully we will get to that point. Clearly, anime is still on the most upward trajectory. Anyway, Suzume, it's a film that takes place in the modern world, which I think is a really cool trademark of Shinkai's recent work. The presence of social media, like modern technology, is really fun in these movies. Definitely a nice contrast from the Miyazaki Studio Ghibli comparisons that Shinkai often gets due to his talent as a creator. Um, it certainly makes sense to position Shinkai as like the successor to the Miyazaki mantle, but I think he has a really different approach to how he makes movies, and it's really cool that we can get something that like this. And Suzume, which is about a 17-year-old high school student who Suzume, who encounters a older university student named Sota, and they very quickly realize that Suzume realizes that she is involved in this basically jet setting effort to stop ecological disaster across the nation of Japan. And what she has to do basically is like close off these gateways to prevent this like demonic worm basically coming from this other dimension, the ever after, and crashing down on Japan and causing earthquakes and tsunamis and whatnot. And it's a really obvious parallel to the 2011 Tohoku earthquake specifically. And I think what's interesting, if you read a lot of like comments and reviews about Suzume, is a lot of people are describing it to be more of a romance, the way like Your Name Wedding with You clearly are. And there's a romantic element to Suzume. It comes in the second half of the mid film, but to me, like the themes of how Sota and Suzume have to close these gates to prevent the worm. They have to remember the people lost in that location. These gates normally are appearing at abandoned places, whether it's an amusement park that's now closed or a school that doesn't work anymore. Whatever it is, there's a few different locations. They have to kind of remember like the past, basically, and it's kind of a, I think, obvious like homage to those lost in the 2011 disaster. You know, that seems to be what this movie is about and where it's all kind of circling back to. Whereas the romance angle, like there it is there, but it kind of comes apart, or comes about kind of quickly in the second half of the film. So I wouldn't really put it as like a romance first type movie. It's not really about that. Um, I think there's some really brilliant like decisions in Suzume. One of those would be that very quickly we encounter a obvious Ghibli um, nod, which would be this cat character, Daijin, this cat who can talk to Suzume and is involved with the gates. And I don't really get into the details of it, but it's really obvious, like Ghibli nod so much so that like a passerby in the film sees the cat running and like remarks that she's in Whisper of the Heart, a Ghibli movie. It's kind of funny that Suzume takes place in a world where the Studio Ghibli movies have also come out already and exist. Pretty funny. But that cat, Daijin, um, that's a really important presence because the cat curses Sota, and Sota, for the majority of the film, is not in his handsome, dreamy university self. He is a chair, a sentient children's chair that you sit on. He can run around, he can still talk, but he's a chair. And watching the chair run around is really fun, but also like that connection that Suzume and Sota has, where Sota needs Suzume, literally needs her to help him get around and do his mission because he's been cursed into being a little baby chair. It's both funny, but also I think a really like specific way to have you connect with these two characters and connect with their very unique specific relationship that they're forming in real time. That I think is probably like the best aspect of the film. When we get into some of like Suzume's personal life, notably losing her mother in I believe it was a tsunami. Like again, the parallels to real life are pretty obvious. But yeah, I just really enjoyed the journey, and even if it doesn't like reach the emotional stratospheric highs that Your Name does, obviously that's okay. Like Shinkai can't make a 10 out of 10 every single time, nor should we expect him to. But he's a really engaging filmmaker. For I just think like the fact that he can make a light romantic film that clearly is inspired by real Japanese history, connect that to you in a modern day story is really cool. Weathering with You similarly was a romantic story first, the way Your Name is, but also had a really clear ecological, climate change undercurrent to it. So the fact that he's able to meld multiple themes into really engaging stories is a lot of fun. I think the Suzume character is very familiar to some of his other female protagonists, so not like it's anything super new, but man, just spending time in the worlds he makes, I think, is a lot of fun. And yeah, I hope he keeps working. He's still pretty young; he's like 50 years old, but he's pretty clearly the number one, Japanese filmmaker. So unfortunately for him, of course, when it comes to the Oscars, I'd be definitely pulling for this to be the best animated feature film nomination, especially after Your Name was grievously snubbed. But Miyazaki's final film, How Do You Live, is coming out, this summer in Japan anyway. So big competition. But yeah, really cool to see Suzume have such big success in the United States or in the world. And I wish, and hopefully in the future, he can get more success in the United States. We'll see. But let me know how'd you feel about Suzume. How'd you compare it to Shinkai's past few films? And for more movie reviews, subscribe. and I'll see you next time. All right, now let's go to the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel's final season premiere. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel season 5, the final season, starting off 3-episode premiere on Amazon Prime Video. Man, Maisel's finally coming to the end. I think season 4, which we reviewed here, liked quite a bit. I thought it was the second best season of the show. It was kind of a effective reset point and made me optimistic for this show's conclusion. The early going, though, of season 5, I have a bit more reservation now. And I think what's important to remember with Maisel is that this is a series that has its flaws, has its indulgences, and at this point, we cannot expect those things to change or go away. The show is what the show is, and I think this show having an effective send off, effective final season, is largely going to center on how character relationships and character arcs are paid off and whether we find those things satisfying or not. It's really going to be a case of wait and see. You know, the early going, watching Midge once again like take a job that's kind of ill conceived, get into her Midgeisms and make those classic mistakes we're used to seeing from her. It's going to be a bit frustrating, right? The things I'm looking forward to, and frankly, for that matter, we very quickly had Stephanie Sue as May leave the series, right? Her and Joel's marriage and pregnancy, for that matter, seemingly called off, and would not be shocked if we never see her again on the show. I was kind of looking forward to that because while I haven't been a huge fan of the main character, of course, Stephanie Sue just had an amazing year. Everything Everywhere All at Once, she was tremendous, Oscar nominated, rightfully so. I was looking forward to her maybe bringing something new to the main character in season 5. Alas, that doesn't seem to be in the cards. Also, in the first episode, I believe, or the beginning of the second episode, I forget. Um, Midge encounters Lenny Bruce, played by Luke Kirby, of course, at the airport. Really cool, of course, to see an old school airport set up in the '60s, back when it was way less secure. Just a funny uh, time capsule moment, as the show can do from time to time. It's a period show, but seeing them connect after everything that happened at the end of season 4, which was very effective and was a huge moment of payoff for fans of the series. Seeing them connect as Lenny's about to go off to LA. LA, of course, where Lenny Bruce tragically overdosed in real life. A bit worried that we're not going to get any more payoff on this relationship, a relationship that fans are really invested in because of the tremendous chemistry between Rachel Brosnahan and Luke Kirby. That's something we're rooting for. We want her to be with Lenny, even though we know Lenny will not be here for long. I am not rooting for her to get back with Joel, but it seems beyond a shadow of a doubt that they're doing everything they can to redeem Joel and get them back together. I don't know. What's interesting about this series, season 5, for the first time, every episode is starting with a flash forward to the future, and we encounter one of Midge's kids, adult Esther, talking to her therapist about her dislike of her mother. We encounter an interview in the '80s, Midge talking to 60 Minutes about her life, and we learn through this flash forward that Midge has had success, Grammy winner, Emmy winner. She's also had multiple marriages. She's had moments of controversy in her career, but we find out that she ultimately becomes that star in the time to come. And yet, it doesn't seem like this series is ever going to show us those moments, it's going to tell us about those moments in these flash forwards. That's a very interesting choice. And to me, a bit anticlimactic to find out Midge does make it. Maybe she does become the stand-in for Joan Rivers she's often been positioned on as this show. And yet, we're not really going to see that manifest because we're going to spend some more time with her in the early '60s, and that's that. I don't know how that sits with me. It seems like this is going to be a bit of like a Forrest Gumpy season with Midge meeting many, many more famous people, as some of the advanced reviews are letting on. And yet, the one famous person she already knows really well, Lenny Bruce, seemingly will not be spending a lot of time in the season. Very annoying. You know, Reed Scott from Veep is a series regular this time around as Gordon Ford, the Tonight Show version standing on this show. I don't know how much true dramatic stakes are there on the series. We got to meet Mila Ventimiglia's character back again. Having him and Midge connect again. I don't know, like the Gilmore Girls and Amy Sherman Palladino previous series like alums appearing on the show. feels a bit indulgent because the things we care about, I want to see paid off. It's a bit frustrating that Rose is still spending time dealing with like the matchmaker, like mafia people this season. Like I was hoping for a new storyline for her in this final season. I don't know. Obviously, Abe is still amazing whenever he's on screen. Tony Shalhoub is so good, love him. But yeah, I'm feeling like so on how this season's starting off, and I'm wondering if they're going to try and use all these flash forwards to pay some stuff off for us, but just makes it feel like the stuff we're watching in the moment, in the present time version of the series, feels like less important. I don't know. So I got to see more, I guess, to really see how this pays off. But at least they're not shying away from the fact that Midge is a terrible mom. You know, as we're going to see with the adult versions of her children not having good things to say about her and how things went. So that they know who Midge is. Sherman Palladino knows what this character is, but man, I don't know. I have a bit of reservation about where this is going to go, and I think ultimately it might come down to like how effective the Lenny send off ends up being. That's going to be big. Also, the flash forward 60 minutes moment made it clear that Midge and Susie did not stay uh, close in the future. And Susie ended up having a very successful management company with other famous clients, but yet they drifted apart. We have to see that pay off in a meaningful way on the series. You can't just tell us that happened and think that's going to be enough. So we will see for the final season of Maisel. But let me know how you're feeling about the season 5 premiere. What are you most looking forward to seeing paid off? And for more TV reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. All right, and now let's go to Barry Season 4, the final season on HBO. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Barry Season 4 on HBO. Yes, Barry's final season has begun, now airing back to back with the final season of Succession. A great time to be a HBO viewer. And of course, the conclusion and return of Barry is hotly anticipated because Barry is one of the best HBO dramas of recent times, and a big part of that, of course, has just been the really creative flourishing that Bill Hader has done, both as the star, but also creative force behind this series. Now he's actually going to be the sole director of season 4, which is very exciting, continuing to really, flap his wings and just show just how important of a talent he is, making this really engaging comedy drama that is both incredibly funny and also incredibly dark and dramatic at the same time. And season 4 really picks us up right where we left off with this 2 episode premiere here. Barry is in prison. The miraculous season 3 finale. We're just picking right up at the end of that. Uh, Detective Moss's dad and Gene Cousineau framed Barry. They got him. He is in prison now. And I think this is a really good premiere that makes me quite excited for how the series is going to wrap up for a few reasons. I think the plot is really zeroed in nicely through these 2 episodes. I'm really happy we got to see the 2 episodes for the premiere as well, because it really, I think, puts you in a good place with all of the core cast here. So Barry, obviously, as our lead here, he's in prison, and he's at the same time seeing visions, in the prison yard. He is uh, kind of openly expressing his feelings, perhaps for the first time, which is a bit of growth for him as a character. But he's seeing visions of his past and flashing back to meeting Fuchs as a child, and kind of continuing what we saw in season 3, where the show is almost getting more of metaphysical in a sense. Of course, remember the scene with Barry on the beach in season 3 was huge, right? Barry seemingly is without like purpose and doesn't seem to have a whole lot of agency at the beginning of this show, kind of lost and defeated, right? Which of course makes sense. Meanwhile, Fuchs starts out agreeing to be an informant with for the FBI and talk to Barry to expose more of the past crimes and try and get himself a deal. Fuchs later flips and decides he doesn't want to do that. He wants to connect with Barry, which then leaves Barry's decision to actually talk to the FBI instead as like a huge turning point. And I thought this was a really effective moment to put Fuchs and Barry against each other once again for this seemingly final showdown in our final season, and also really smartly brings NoHo Hank and Cristobal and brings NoHo Hank's story back into focus, right? I was really curious how NoHo Hank would stay on the show. Obviously, the Anthony Carrigan performance as Hank is awesome. He's probably the best comedic force on the show, but it would have felt a bit contrived, I think, to keep Hank on the show unless it was done really well after everything that Hank went through throughout season three. But by having Hank and Cristobal together and safe after everything that happened, deciding to kind of unite the Chechens and the Bolivians, kind of unite their business interests and try and get going again, get themselves reestablished. And I thought all that stuff was pretty funny too, as they're trying to make their pitches to their two factions. But having Hank feel betrayed by learning that Barry is talking to the FBI when Fuchs calls him, and then Hank deciding he needs to not break out Barry and use him on their side, they have to kill Barry instead. Really awesome way to bring Hank back into that plot and put him at odds with Barry, just the way Fuchs is at odds with Barry. I really like that decision. Really happy about that. Meanwhile, Sally goes back home, leaves LA. We saw her getting on the plane at the end of season three. Meets her parents. She's not getting what she wants from her parents, and ends up going back to LA and realizing that her career is completely finished because not only is she uh, the C word girl after the viral video of her yelling at her Darcy Corden, her assistant in season three. Not only is she completely toxic on that viral video, but now she is also connected to a notorious serial killer in Barry Bergman, someone she used to date. So Sally's life is really spiraling, and you see her talk to Barry at the prison on the phone, and you can tell that Sally, from the way she was moving at home with her parents, understanding her personal situation, Sally's incredibly broken. I'm not really sure what the arc is going to be with for Sally because she's definitely a person who has made a lot of mistakes during her, narrative arcs here. But you'd have to imagine the show's going to set her up for some kind of redemption in some way. I'm not sure. How connected will that be to the rest of the plot? Obviously Sally did kill someone, basically protecting Barry in season three. Of course, that was like a bad guy, so I'm not really sure if there's any like real connection to like the criminal element anymore for Sally. I'm quite curious how they kind of keep her connected to everyone else for just being a separate plot. We'll see. Then Jean, of course, talks to Detective Moss's dad. Was it Jim Moss? I forget his name. I love Mr. Moss as well. Amazing presence, some of the best humor too. He's awesome. Just the stern presence he has. But we have Moss and Jean decide they're not going to talk to the press. Moss doesn't want his daughter's story and tragic end to be exploited for entertainment, which of course is completely reasonable. But Jean, despite what he says to Detective Moss, Jean's a narcissist, right? We've known this now for 3 seasons and running. Gene can't help himself. He has to talk to Vanity Fair. And when he has this put on this whole elaborate stage show to talk to the reporter, I'm sure he's not going to come out looking good once that story gets out there. But Gene, he revels in the fame, the light fame he's got as the one who took down Barry, right? So surely we haven't heard the last from the Gene Barry conflict. But yeah, overall, like I'm actually feeling really good about where all our core characters are and how they're connected to each other through 2 episodes. And I think you just think back to season three, the big swings that were taken on the show with the beach scene, as well as the incredible motorcycle chase set piece. Like we don't really know what to expect anymore, except that it's going to be done at a really high level and executed on incredibly well. The camera work that Hader is now really solely responsible for is just incredibly impressive. You have these really finely drawn characters across the ensemble, and the show has progressively gotten darker and darker. You think about where the show has come from. It's really left behind the satirization of Hollywood and like LA culture and stuff like that season one was. And season one was like perfect note the entire time. We never would have thought the show would blossom into what it's become, but now it's such a richer, more emotionally layered series and really unlike anything else we get right now. So Cannot wait to watch the end of Barry season 4. Just thinking back, not only is it going to be airing with the final season of Succession at the same time, but Ted Lasso season 3, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel season 5. That's 4 shows ending their final seasons at the same time. All those premieres are going to air in like a 5-day span at the end of May. Pretty exciting if you happen to watch all those shows. But let me know how you're feeling about Barry. And for more TV reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.
All right, that does it for this week. Next week, we got a ton of stuff to get into. Beau Was Afraid, the new Ari Aster film with Joaquin Phoenix, The Mandalorian season finale, new album from Suga of BTS, and a bunch of other stuff. Gonna get into too. So let me know it's good, and I'll see you next week.